Betrayal doesn't just break your heart, it disorients your sense of reality. It makes you question everything, your choices, your judgment, your worth. You replay conversations, search for red flags you missed, wonder if the signs were always there, and you just didn't want to see them. But betrayal isn't just the violation of trust. It's the collapse of a world you thought was safe. When someone you trusted deceives you, it creates a rupture in the mind, a before and after. Before, where love felt secure, where intimacy was real, and after, where every word feels suspicious, every memory tainted. You feel exposed, humiliated, destabilized, as if the ground beneath you has been quietly dissolving for months, and only now, in the fallout, can you see how far you've fallen. The emotional toll is never linear. Some days you're furious, the kind of rage that makes your hands tremble. Other days you're numb, as if your nervous system has gone offline just to protect you. Sadness seeps in quietly. Confusion spirals into anxiety. You find yourself distrusting not only the one who hurt you, but everyone, including yourself. That's the cruelest part, the internal betrayal. The part where you blame yourself for being too naive, too hopeful, too willing to believe. And yet, even in this chaos, something else begins to emerge. The deep ache for healing, because no one wants to live in the wreckage forever. No one wants to carry that weight, that sense that you're no longer safe in the world or in your own skin. Healing starts not with forgiveness, but with acknowledgement, with saying to yourself, something real was broken here, and I'm allowed to feel devastated. It's tempting to rush past the pain, to perform strength, to pretend you're fine. But healing doesn't come from bypassing grief. It comes from walking through it. And grief after betrayal is strange. You're mourning not just the loss of a relationship or connection, but the loss of a version of reality, the person you thought they were, the future you thought was possible, even the version of you who used to believe. So, the first step is simple, but brutal. Let yourself hurt. Don't minimize it. Don't gaslight yourself. Don't compare your pain to someone else's and decide yours isn't valid. It is. What happened matters. During this time, self-care isn't just bubble baths or distraction. It's boundaries. It's rest. It's saying no to people who demand your energy when you have none left to give. It's reaching out to people who can hold space for you. Friends who don't offer quick fixes but simply say, I'm here. It's letting your nervous system come down from the constant adrenaline of betrayal, the hypervigilance, the analyzing, the inability to sleep. Psychologist Kristen Neff often emphasizes the power of self-compassion. It's not about avoiding accountability or denying your flaws. It's about treating yourself with the same tenderness you'd give to a friend. Betrayal can make you harsh with yourself. You berate yourself for not seeing it sooner. You question whether you deserved it. But healing asks you to step out of that spiral and into gentleness. Not because everything is okay, but because you're allowed to not be okay and still be worthy of love. In time, the pain won't vanish, but it will soften. The waves will come less often. You'll start to breathe again without holding tension in your chest. And that's not forgetting, that's healing. You're not erasing the betrayal. You're learning how to live with it without letting it define your entire sense of self. And slowly, from the ruins, you begin to ask, what now? Not how do I forget this, but how do I live through this in a way that brings me back to life? That question is the beginning of trust, not in them, but in you. At some point in the healing process, the pain shifts. It doesn't disappear, but it changes shape, from shock to confrontation. You stop spinning in circles and start looking directly at what happened. And this part, this quiet reckoning with reality, is where real healing begins. Because betrayal isn't just what someone did to you, it's what that action revealed, about the relationship, about them, about how much you were willing to overlook in the name of love, or loyalty, or fear of being alone. There's a difference between pain and clarity. Pain screams, clarity whispers, and to reach it, you have to look at the betrayal without distortion. You have to name it, even if the truth leaves a bitter taste in your mouth. What exactly happened? Was it a lie? A secret? A double life? Did they minimize it? Did they blame you? Did you silence your instincts because you didn't want to lose them? These aren't just questions for closure. They're questions for you, to reclaim your agency, to break the trance of denial. Because healing demands that you see clearly, not just what they did, but what you need. And from there, a more complicated question arises. Can this be repaired? Not all relationships survive betrayal, nor should they. Sometimes the damage is too deep, the patterns too toxic, the trust too fractured. But other times, there's still something alive beneath the wreckage. Not just love, but accountability, growth, a willingness on both sides to do the hard work. Not to go back to what was, but to build something new. And that work starts with conversation, not surface-level apologies, not defensiveness or empty promises, but real, gut-wrenching honesty. You need to be able to say, "This is how you hurt me," and they need to be able to listen, really listen, without rushing to defend themselves. There needs to be space for anger, for sorrow, for raw truth. This isn't about rehashing the details forever, but about making sure your pain is seen, not dismissed. Without that, trust can't even begin to regrow. But even with honesty, even with willingness, forgiveness doesn't arrive on command. It's not a moral checkbox. It's not weakness. And it's definitely not the same as saying, "What they did was okay." As the philosopher Hannah Arendt once said, forgiveness is the key to action and freedom. But that freedom isn't for them. It's for you. Forgiveness means you're choosing not to let the betrayal define your future, even as you carry the scars. Still, forgiveness without boundaries is self-abandonment. That's why one of the most essential acts of healing is defining what you will and will not tolerate moving forward. What are your non-negotiables? What kind of behavior will you never excuse again? Even in the name of love? Setting boundaries isn't about punishment. It's about safety. It's how you teach others and yourself that your trust is sacred. This isn't easy, because when you've been betrayed, your mind becomes a battlefield. You want to protect yourself, but you also want to connect. You crave closeness, but fear it at the same time. So you have to give yourself time. Time to feel, time to evaluate, time to see if the person who hurt you is willing to show up in a new way, not just with words, but with action. Because trust isn't rebuilt through grand gestures. It's rebuilt in the small moments. Consistency, transparency, follow through. And even then, there's no guarantee. You can do everything right, communicate clearly, set boundaries, give space for healing, and still end up disappointed. That's the risk of love. But what matters is that this time, you're not betraying yourself. You're not abandoning your truth for the comfort of illusion. You're choosing to show up for your own healing, whether or not the relationship survives. And that choice, to face the truth, to forgive slowly, to protect your peace, is what sets the stage for rebuilding something real, whether that's with them or without them. Eventually, the question shifts from, "Why did this happen?" to "What now?" Not because the betrayal no longer matters, it always will, but because healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about learning how to live with what you know, without letting it poison your capacity for love. Rebuilding trust is not about going back to how things were. That version of the relationship is gone. What's possible now is something different, something more honest, if both people are willing to do the work. But rebuilding trust doesn't start with them. It starts with you. First, you shift your focus to the present. When you've been betrayed, your mind lives in the past, dissecting it, replaying it, trying to understand how everything slipped through your fingers. But healing asks a different question. What do I need now to feel safe? That question pulls you out of rumination and into action. You stop looking for retroactive explanations and start creating new conditions. Trust doesn't rebuild itself. You rebuild it, step by step, decision by decision. This is where self-awareness becomes your compass. You begin to recognize patterns. You see where you ignored your intuition, where you explained things away, where you compromised too much for the sake of peace. But this isn't about self-blame. It's about clarity. The past becomes a teacher, not a sentence. And from that knowledge, you set different terms. You speak more clearly. You listen to your gut. You know now what betrayal feels like in your body, and you learn to trust those signals next time they whisper. And maybe, just maybe, the relationship survives. Maybe the other person shows up with real humility. Maybe they take responsibility, not just with words, but with sustained effort. Maybe they accept your boundaries, even when they're inconvenient. That's what real repair looks like. Not a rush back to normal, but a new normal, built with care. A structure rebuilt from the ground, with foundations that didn't exist before. But even if the relationship ends, that doesn't mean trust is gone forever. The biggest lie betrayal tells you is that you'll never trust again, that every future connection is a risk you can't afford, that you have to become harder, colder, more skeptical, or else you'll be hurt again. But trust isn't about naivete, it's about courage. Trust, as philosopher Søren Kierkegaard once said, is a risk taken in faith, not blind faith, but chosen faith. You trust again, not because the world is safe, but because you refuse to let fear run your life. You know now what betrayal looks like. That makes you wiser, not weaker. So you begin to take cautious steps. You surround yourself with people who don't make you second-guess your worth. You build a support system that reflects back your dignity. You open yourself up, slowly, intentionally, knowing that vulnerability isn't the opposite of strength, but its expression. You don't need guarantees. You just need a sense of inner alignment, that you're not pretending, not forcing, not settling. You're choosing, eyes open. And over time, trust stops being this lofty ideal you had to earn from others and starts becoming a relationship you have with yourself. You trust your own voice now, your own perceptions, your ability to walk away when something feels wrong. That's the kind of trust no one can take from you, because it was never dependent on someone else's choices to begin with. You may never forget the betrayal. You may always carry some of its residue, but you're no longer stuck in it. You're no longer defined by it. You've felt the weight of it and survived. And now, you get to build something new, with yourself, with others, with the world. Not perfect, but real.